Shalom. We're back again with another lesson. And before I begin this lesson, I'd like to first begin by giving all honor, glory, and praises unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Recha Kodash. I want to give double honors to my elders and apostles and elder bishops of Great Millstone, who rule well, where I've learned this truth from. I want to say peace and salutations to you, Akim, you brothers out there laboring, pushing this word out in all truth and in sincerity, presenting your bodies as a living sacrifice, which is your reasonable service. I want to say shalom to you, Akwath, meaning you Israelite sisters that may be listening, and also to you Israelites that are scattered across the four corners of the earth. You may look like these other nations, but your seed line goes back to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, which is the chosen seed line. Shalom. So in this lesson, we're going to speak on the war. We've seen a lot of events taking place in the past days. And, Nero 47, aka Donald Trump, he's basically made a threat or a statement to say that, dropping nuclear weapons or using nuclear weapons is not off the table, right? So this is an option that potentially could be used. So in the coming days, there may be a nuclear strike against Iran. We may even see nuclear strike between Russia and Ukraine, right? So the tensions in the so-called Middle East are rising again, right? So you had the ceasefire, right? You had the MOU which failed. The scriptures talk about, the word that the Lord speaks. They don't go out void. The word of the Lord does not go out void, but it will accomplish everything that the Lord sent it to, right? And it's said in the scriptures that it will come to pass that the Third World War is going to take place, right? When you read in the book of Joel, chapter 3, right, it talks about it, which Lord willing we'll get into some of those scriptures through this lesson. But we're going to read in the book of Revelation, chapter 11, we're going to go to verse 14. And it reads, "The second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly," right? So the second woe is talking about the Second World War, right? So after Pearl Harbor, Germany fell, and then you had Pearl Harbor, and that's where you had the introduction of the atom bomb. America dropped the atom bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which put an end to the Second World War, right? So it says in the scripture, the second woe is past. Woe means destruction, right? So the Second World War is finished. It says, and behold, the third woe, the Third World War, cometh quickly, right? So we understand that World War III is coming. It's prophesied to happen. So the ceasefire, the MOU, all these peace deals were destined to fail because the Lord, it's not the Lord's will for it to be peace. The Lord's will is that World War III kicks off so these nations can be gathered in the valley of Jehoshaphat or Yehoshaphat in the Levant region, so-called Middle East, to where the judgment takes place, right? So, and this is where, this is the trajectory that we're heading to that Third World War, right? So as I continue to read, we're going to read in the book of Habakkuk, right? So this is the book of Habakkuk, chapter 2, right? And we're going to start from the top, verse 1. It says, I will stand upon my watch and set me upon the tower, and will watch to see what he will say unto me, and what I shall answer when I am reproved, right? So the job of a watchman, the prophet is a watchman, right? And the job of a watchman is to stand on the tower and look out at the horizon, and he will watch for danger or any sign of trouble, and when he sees that trouble, it's his job to warn the people, right? So when we read verse 2, it says, and the Lord Yahweh answered me and said, write the vision and make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth it, right? So that's how the Lord speaks to his prophets, is through the prophecies, the prophetic events that the Lord speaks is is the way the Lord communicates with his men, right? But as you can see here in the second verse, it says, write the vision and make it plain upon tables, meaning write it down. Whatever the Lord shows you in a vision or, through a dream, the Lord is saying, write it down, make it plain upon tables, because the Lord is not the author of confusion. He's there to give us the understanding, make it plain. And it says that he may run that readeth it, meaning when you understand what's getting ready to come, the judgment, the prophetic events that the Lord's written of, we understand, this is that time, this is that time that this is getting ready to happen. So when it says that he may run that readeth it, it's talking about prepare, meaning to come back to the Lord, to repent, to get the understanding, to build up your faith, That's what it's talking about. And just to quickly touch on that, we're going to go to the book of Ezekiel. Right, so this is the book of Ezekiel, chapter 33. Right, and we're going to go to verse 7. And it reads, So thou, O son of man, I have made thee a watchman unto the house of Israel. Therefore thou shalt hear the word at my mouth and warn them from me. Right? So the Son of Man, right? It says, so thou, O Son of Man. It's talking about the prophets, right? It says, I have made thee a watchman unto the house of Israel. So the prophets were set up to warn the people, right? To warn the Israelites, the elect of Israel, right? To let them know the prophecies, right? To write down the prophecies and to give the people the heads up so that they can prepare themselves. So now we go back to the book of Habakkuk, chapter 2. I'm going to read verse 3. And it reads, For the vision is yet for an appointed time. So the prophetic event that the Lord has shown to his prophet, his men, the watchmen, is for an appointed time, meaning it's going to come to pass at a specific time, right? And we're going to continue reading to find out when that specific time is, right? So this is Habakkuk 2 and 3. It says, For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie, right? So this is to show you that we are at the end, right? We've come to that time where these prophecies are going to start to speak loud and clear, right? So it says, though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry. So these prophetic events, although they're taking a long time to come, right? They're almost delayed even, right? So since the start of the war, you were expecting, the war to escalate quickly. But then you had the ceasefire, right? That long period of time, right? And it's just like, well, man, this is taking a long time to happen. But now, as we witness everything that's taking place in the earth through the news outlets and social media, we can see these things are starting to speak louder, right? So it says, though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry. So these things are going to continue to come like dominoes. Are going to fall one after the other. It's going to start coming faster and faster, right? I'm going to read in the book of Matthew, chapter 24. I'm going to read verse 6. Right? It says, And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet, right? So we understand the end is not yet, right? We've just read in the book of Habakkuk, chapter 2, verse 3, it says, the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie, right? So we're not at the end just yet, but we're very close to the end because we're seeing the signs of these prophecies taking place in the earth, right? You had the war, the rumor of war where, you first heard about, Russia getting ready to invade Ukraine, and then they ended up invading Ukraine. You had all these North Korea, getting ready to strike South Korea. You had all these wars and rumors of wars taking place, right? But back then, that wasn't the time. But now over the course of a few years, we went through COVID, right? We went through all these other events. Now we're starting to see these things escalating, right? So these rumors are now turning into wars, right? So it says, and you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. Right? Now, as we continue reading in verse 7, it says, for nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. Right? So we see, in the past few years, the escalation of tensions between Israel, Iran, America. We saw America invade Venezuela. We see that America was targeting Greenland. We also see that America is now targeting Cuba, and they want to take over the western half of the hemisphere of the earth, right? So America's on that warpath, and this is what we're seeing, right? We're seeing nation shall rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom, right? Now, as we continue reading, it says, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places, right? So we got the famine, right? We'll possibly see that happen, due to the fact that the Strait of Hormuz has been closed, so no oil's coming through and no fertilizer that the farming industry needs to for the harvest, right? They still don't have enough oil, they still don't have enough fertilizer, and they need that, right? Then you have the other strait over by the Red Sea, is that the Al Bab Mandeb Strait, right, which is over there by Yemen. They're looking at closing that part off, right? So the oil's not able to get through there, nor is global trade able to sail through that strait, right? Which again is causing a lot of issues with the economy, right? Because now it's taking ships, a longer time to sail around the Horn of Africa, the bottom of Africa is all the way up to Europe to deliver the goods to Europe, which is increasing the costs. It's taking longer for packages and deliveries to make it to the destination, which again is causing a lot of issues, right? So that famine looks like it's something that's going to hit us by the winter months. Towards the end of the year, prices are going to skyrocket. Inflation's going to skyrocket because of this thing, right? Then you have pestilences, right? So a lot of people, are potentially going to get ill. You had, the World Health Organization like try to put in a lockdown for the vid. I won't say it because obviously I don't want to get flagged for it, but you had all that take place before, and now with all the diseases and everything that are coming out, it's there's a potential for that to spread during the winter months. So we'll probably hear about that in the winter months, right? Then you have the earthquakes in diverse places. In Venezuela, they got hit with multiple strong earthquakes, right? Multiple, which caused a lot of death, right? Again, these things are all prophesied to take place in the earth, right? Now, when we read verse 8, it says, all these are the beginning of sorrows. So we understand that there's a lot of events, prophetic events, that are taking place in the earth that the scriptures speak on. One of those events, that's going to take place is the war, the Third World War. But as we continue, we'll read in the book of Isaiah, right? Because that war is coming, right? And nothing's going to stop that war from taking place, right? So this is Isaiah chapter 9 and 5, right? So it reads, for every battle of the warrior is with confused noise and garments rolled in blood, right? So when you think about war, medieval war, medieval times, you have them coming with the swords. There's a lot of yelling, the battle cries, the drums of war, you know, uh, limbs and arms and legs and all kinds of things being chopped off. You know what I mean? Rolled in blood, right? That's how you would see every war of the old times, right? It says, but this, so this future war, shall be with burning and fuel of fire. So you have the missiles, a lot of missiles going to be launched, right? And we're already seeing that. When you look at the news reports of Iran being hit, is bombs, is missiles being launched. It's all these heavy bombs that are being dropped everywhere. Do you know what I mean? Like this is what it's referring to here. You see? So I'm going to continue reading because I did mention about the book of Joel. Right, so in the book of Joel, chapter 3, I'm going to jump to verse 9, right? And it says this, it says, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles. So all the other nations outside of the nation of Israel, the Israelites, yeah? It says, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles. Prepare war. See, war is coming. Wake up the mighty men, and let all the men of war draw near. Let them come up, right? So all the armies of the earth, all the nations of the earth are getting ready to enter into this war, right? This thing is going to escalate. Nothing that Nero 47 is going to be able to do to stop it, you know? Trump cannot stop what's getting ready to happen. That's why he's fed up of doing the negotiations, because they're always going to fail, because the prophecy dictates that World War III takes place. Yeah, that's the prophecy. Now, as we continue reading in verse 10, it says, beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. Now, a lot of these weaker countries that wouldn't necessarily normally go up against or speak out against America, they're starting to speak out against America. You know, they're starting to speak out at the things that Donald Trump is pushing. You know, the tariffs, all these things. You know, going into other people's lands and stealing the resources. A lot of these other countries are speaking out against America. So what you're finding is that where it says bleat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears, a lot of countries now are opting out of spending on their agricultural industry, their farming industry, and they're putting it into their military industry, right? Japan is one of those nations that didn't have a military. After World War II, they didn't have a military, but now all of a sudden, Japan is spending more on its military complex, right? So you got the beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong, right? So these nations are rising up. It says, verse 11, assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. Thither cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Lord Yahweh, right? So they're all gathering up their troops and gathering up their military, and recruiting is up on all these nations, and everybody's getting ready for that war, that final war, right? Verse 12, it says, let the heathen be wakened and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat, or Yahweh Shaphat, meaning the valley of the Lord's judgment, right? The Lord's, the valley of decision. It says, for there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. And this is where the Lord is going to judge them by, causing that third world war to kick off, right? Now, before, Russia and America exchange nuclear weapons, the RFID microchip has to be in play. Jacob's trouble has to be in play. All these things, these prophetic events need to take place. And then will be the final, showdown between Russia and America, where America will be destroyed. And in the midst of that destruction, that's when Yahweh Shai is going to turn up with them chariots and lay the smackdown on all of them, right? So verse 13, so this is Joel chapter 3, verse 13. It says, put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Now the sickle is like that hook that they use to cut the crops during the harvest season. They swing it back and forth like like a big shearing tool, like a massive hook, sharp hook that cuts the crops down, right? It says, put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe, meaning these other nations is ripe for their judgment. Like they're getting ready to be judged on a heavy level, right? It says, come, get you down, for the press is full, the fats overflow, for for their wickedness is great, meaning the Lord is preparing these nations as the sacrifice, right? So they're about to be cut down, right? Because their wickedness is exceedingly polluted the whole earth, right? Verse 14, it says, multitudes in the valley of decision, for the day of the Lord Yahweh is near in the valley of decision, right? So World War III is getting ready to take place. The Battle of Armageddon is going to be a bloodbath, right, for a lot of these nations, right? So I'm only going to get a few more scriptures, and then I'll close it out there. I think the point is being made. But what I wanted to really touch on was the fact that these nuclear weapons are going to be deployed, and we're already hearing talk from Donald Trump that they're not taking those cards off the table to use nuclear weapons. Russia's saying the exact same thing. So nuclear weapons will be used during this this time, right? So we're going to read in the book of Isaiah, chapter 54, and we're going to read in verse 16. And it reads, "Behold, I have created the smith that bloweth the coals in the fire, and that bringeth forth an instrument for his work. I have created the waster to destroy," right? So where it says, "Behold, I created the smith," it's like when you think about a blacksmith. A blacksmith's job is to create and forge weapons, steel weapons, right? But this here, what it's talking about, it's saying, "I have created the smith that bloweth the coals in the fire." This is talking about your scientists. When you had Oppenheimer create the atom bomb along with the other scientists, they were considered like blacksmiths or like the smith, right? And that bringeth forth the work for his instrument or for his work, brought forth an instrument for his work. So the Lord was the one that put the knowledge in the minds of these scientists to create the atom bomb, because the atom bomb is going to be used. These nukes, nuclear missiles, hydrogen bombs, all these types of weapons are going to be used during World War III, and that's how the Lord is going to judge the earth, with these weapons, right? It says, "And I have created the waster to destroy." The waster is these ICBM nuclear missiles, right? This is what it's referring to, okay? So I'm going to read in the book of Revelation. I'm reading the book of Revelation, chapter 6, and we're going to read verse 12. All right? So it says, "And I beheld when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake," right? It says, "And the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood," right? Now, where it says, "And I beheld when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake," that's talking about the impact of the ICBMs when multiple, ICBMs strike the earth, right? It's going to be a great earthquake. It's going to be a loud noise and a great earthquake because the earth is going to shake, right? It says, "And the sun became black as sackcloth of hair," meaning the fallout, the ICBM, the mushroom clouds, right? They are going to black out the sun. It's going to be, in parts of the earth, it's going to be blotted out, It's not going to be like sunlight, like, for a little while. You might not be able to see the sun from that part of the world because of, the mushroom clouds, right? It says, "And the moon became as blood." Now, as we continue reading, verse 13 says, "And the stars of heaven fell unto the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind." All right. So where it says, "And the stars of heaven fell unto the earth," John the Revelator is trying to describe what he's seeing, right? So he's seeing this vision of, what he's describing as stars of heaven, but they're the ICBM nuclear missiles going through the re-entry back into the atmosphere, right? And he's describing it as a fig tree casting off her untimely figs, as if the tree was shaken by a mighty wind, right? So he's like seeing the figs drop, and he's like, "Wow, them stars are falling just like a fig tree." You know what I mean? That's what he's picturing. He doesn't know that they're ICBM missiles. He's just seeing it, and that's why he's describing it as stars of heaven, right, falling to the earth. As we continue on in verse 14, it says, "And the heaven departed as a scroll when it is rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. See? So that's talking about the mushroom cloud that it's referring to there, right? It says the heaven departed as a scroll. When you look at videos of nuclear detonations or destruction, you see all the ICBM nuclear missiles detonating. They look like clouds are rolling. They look like scrolls that are rolling out of their place, right? Or rolling together, right? Now, I'm going to read one last scripture and we're going to close it out there. This is the book of Isaiah. This is the book of Isaiah, chapter 24, right? And verse 20. And it reads, the earth shall reel to and fro like a drunkard, and shall be removed like a cottage, and the transgression thereof shall be heavy upon it, and it shall fall and not rise again, right? So when them ICBMs strike the earth, like you're gonna have tidal waves, you're gonna have all these islands moving out the way, sinking. Like you're gonna see a lot of crazy stuff, man, in that time. If you survive, right? Only the elect are gonna survive in that time, right? So, that's the end of the lesson. I'm gonna leave it there. I pray that this lesson was edifying through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rechach Kodash. Double honors to the elders and apostles and elder bishops of Great Millstone who do well, taught me this truth. I want to say peace and salutations to you hopeful elect. It's on to the next lesson, Lord willing. Shalom.